So in the last video, we worked out how to route to child components, and we want to take a look at this passenger viewer. Each passenger gets passed into a form, which is a stateless component. When we want to update that passenger, we simply get that passed to us via an event. Now, at the minute, all we're doing is hard coding the passenger of 1. So if we change this to 2, we would actually get a different passenger. If we changed it to 3, we would get a different passenger, and so on. So we basically want to make this dynamic. The way that we can do this is by importing the router and the active route. So first of all, what we're going to do is inject them, and then we'll actually import the actual pieces. So what we'll do is private and then router. So this will actually give us the actual router. And then we'll ask for the route itself. So we'll say private route. So this is going to be the activated route. So first of all, we need to import the router and the activated route. So let's go up here. Now, because this is a smart component or a container component, we can do these kind of things here. So we'll import the router from Angular/router, and we also wanted to import the activated route. So we'll go ahead and we'll import both of those. So now that these are both injected, what we can do is essentially subscribe to the changes of the route, and we can read the route params that come back and pass them dynamically into our service. Now, this sounds confusing, but it is actually very simple. So what we're going to do is this.route. Now, this actually gives us a bunch of parameters. So we can do this.route.params. Now, this allows us to essentially subscribe to those params. So first, what we'll do is take a look at these in the browser just to see what we actually get back. And we'll say data, and it's going to be of type params. So we'll go ahead and import that from the router as well. So when this comes back, what we'll do is just console.log, and we'll log that data out to see what we can actually get back. So even though I am at /passengers2 and we have Steve loaded as usual, we have an ID of Steve of 1, we have this object of 2. Now when I change this to 3, we will then get a new object with an ID of 3. So you can see how we're going to use this param to basically fetch the right user based on the routing. So let's go back and actually implement this functionality. Now to do this, we essentially need to merge this function call with this function call. So what we can do instead of a subscribe is use something called switchMap. Now obviously this is an RxJS operator, so what we need to do is go up and import it from here. So what we'll do is import RxJS/add/operator/switchMap. So this would essentially allow us to add that functionality to Angular. Now you can see that this is erroring because switchMap is expecting an observable. And you've guessed it, this is an observable here, which we are subscribing to. So what we can basically do, instead of logging out the data, we can dynamically pass our observable here. So let me just delete this and keep note of this subscription here. We can simply return this.passengerService.getPassenger. However, we want the data.id instead of number 1. So we can do data.id. So what we're going to do instead of params is say it's going to be of some kind of passenger, so our ID property won't actually error on us. Now, because this is an array function, we can clean this up and put it onto one line. So you can see here, if I hide the sidebar, you can see that we have this.route.params. Then we're getting the route data. So you can imagine that this is the params passed to us, but we're saying it's going to be somewhat of type passenger. The data that we're actually getting is having that ID property that we just looked at, which we're going to pass into getPassenger. And all we need to do is remove the line between, because the switch map will actually change our subscription from observing changes from the URL at this point and basically return a new observable, and we get the result of the new observable here. So one more time, we have the params will change, we get the param data such as an object with an ID of 2, we pass that ID dynamically into our service. Once that service has been resolved, We then get that data back through our subscribe block and we just bind it to this.passenger. So let's save that and go back to the browser and check it out. So you can see here that I am at /1 and we have Steve, who we started with. So let's change this to 2. Now you can see that we have passenger ID of 2 and Rose. We have the passenger ID of 3, which I've changed to my name. We have the passenger ID of 4. And you can see that the switchMap is then subscribing to these param changes and basically returning us dynamically the new piece of data based on the param.